Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So Ukrainian President Zelensky just addressed Congress, finished addressing Congress moments ago after addressing the Canadian Parliament yesterday. The message was similar. Here's the top line.
Is this a lot to ask for, to create a no-fly zone over Ukraine to save people? Is this too much to ask? Humanitarian no-fly zone, something that that Russia would not be able to terrorize our free cities. If this is too much to ask, we offer an alternative. You know what kind of defense systems we need, S-300 and other similar systems. You know how much depends on the battlefield, on the ability to use aircraft, powerful, strong aviation to protect our people, our freedom, our land, aircraft that can help Ukraine, help Europe. And you know that they exist and you have them, but they are on earth, not in the Ukrainian sky. They do not defend our people. I have a dream. These words are known to each of you. Today I can say, I have a need. I need to protect our sky. I need your decision, your help, which means exactly the same you feel when you hear the words, I have a dream.
Between the I have a dream reference and translating that to I have a need to his reference to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, I mean, look, I appreciate that he's doing whatever he can to get whatever he can for his country as he tries to fight back this invasion by Putin. I appreciate that. But it doesn't mean that we should be whipped into frenzy by, frankly, ridiculous comparisons this country's history.
Right. And he's saying that your country, your September 11th is what we've been dealing with every day for the last 3 weeks. And then they showed a video montage of what's going on there and the families being torn apart and people losing everything.
Yeah, get it. But that is not compelling. And there are downsides to this proposed no-fly zone. Spotty record on de-escalation. The attack by Russians at present is mostly artillery. It's not airstrikes. And number three, as some military types have made mention, including, by the way, a coalition of foreign policy professionals and practitioners, including former ambassadors to Russia and the Soviet Union, professors, former Republican and Democrat Hill staffers, all part of this coalition against the no-fly zone. They penned a letter, co-signed this letter. They also make the point that NATO, to enforce a no-fly zone, would likely need to strike anti-aircraft batteries on Russian and Belarusian territory, which would be an obvious escalation. And frankly, even if you did sort of a humanitarian airlift, as some have argued, what happens if Russia shoots down some supply plane that's bringing food and medical equipment and stuff? And then what's our response going to be there? Now we're walking into an escalation by walking into this annihilation strategy that Putin is clearly employing at present. It's just a lot more complicated than these sort of sentimental appeals that Zelensky is making to us. And again, that's not to be unsympathetic or unempathetic to his position, but we also have to think about this clearly through the funnel of America's national security interests. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. You can follow him on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. That's at Gordon G. Chang, C-H-A-N-G. Gordon Chang, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dan and Amy.
Part of this and where your expertise comes in, too, is how would China respond to a NATO-enforced no-fly zone that Zelensky is requesting?
I think that China would look at that and think essentially that the U.S. would come to Taiwan's aid and that Japan and Australia would do so as well. It would be a show of determination that has not been seen from the Biden administration. I mean, the issues with Taiwan and China's other neighbors are quite different than those in Eastern Europe. But nonetheless, the Chinese are taking their cues from the Biden administration and what it's doing with regard to Ukraine. There are reports, which I don't believe, that Xi Jinping was planning to invade Taiwan this year. But nonetheless, we have got basically the makings of conflict at both ends of the Eurasian landmass at the same time. And this is an exceedingly dangerous situation.
Well, what should happen, though, if chemical weapons are used by Putin?
That is the red line that President Obama talked about and which did not enforce. And because he didn't enforce it, I think that Putin has taken away a lesson that he can kill with impunity. And that is a lesson that we cannot allow to stand. Yes, doing anything in Ukraine right now is dangerous, but through 3 decades of truly misguided U.S. policy on Russia, we created a situation where Putin could destabilize the world. I'm not blaming the U.S. For wrong acts. It's just that we have to understand that when we don't defend what we believe is important, people like Putin will take advantage of that. And so we should have seen this coming because the conditions were there. This is something that we could have prevented, but we chose not to do so. And this is not just a complaint about Biden. This is basically a complaint of consistent U.S. policy, Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives.
So it seems to me that the Chinese communists are suggesting that they would like this to come to an end, but it also seems to me that, number one, they're not going to facilitate it in any meaningful way, but also, number two, despite some of the reports, they're not going to get involved in it in any material way in terms of providing support to the Russians either.
They're providing substantial support to the Russians.
In what form?
First of all, there are the large commodity purchases.
Yes.
Oil and gas.
Military support.
There is military support from open sources that has not been confirmed. So, for instance, DJI, which is the world's largest drone maker, Ukraine uses their drones, and DJI is providing information to Russia how to target Ukrainian drone operators of DJI products. That is military assistance.
Yeah, okay.
So, and as I said, that's unconfirmed. I mean, that's just what you can find in open source. But that is consistent what we think China is doing. And China is giving hidden subsidies to its companies to buy Russian equipment, commodities. So there's a lot of other stuff. There is diplomatic support, propaganda support, financial support, making China's financial system available to Russian institutions that have been sanctioned. So across the board, Xi Jinping is helping Russia. And if China really wanted this war to end soon, China knows how to do it, but it's not.
And so with respect to China then, I mean, do they fear being caught providing that sort of material support and sanctions being imposed, the world turning its attention on China and beginning to treat China the way that it's treating Russia? Do they have any fear of that, or have they built that into their calculation?
I think that they've built it into their calculations, Dan, and the reason is that, again, through truly misguided our China policy, we have taught China to ignore our warnings, and this is over the course of decades. So while, the Chinese hear our warnings, they say, well, why should I take any notice of this? You haven't done anything in the past. And that really is a reason why I think China has gone on a much more belligerent path recently, because they do not respect, for instance, President Biden. And generally, they don't respect American presidents, full stop.
Well, to your point, too, sorry to interrupt, but to your point, I mean, on Monday, you had the Chinese communists dress us down again over, suggesting we're violating our stated position on Taiwan and support for the one China policy. So at a time when we're talking about China vis-a-vis Russia, we're getting lectured about our position on one China policy.
Right, and China's statements on that are factually incorrect. They mischaracterize our China policy, which our policy is that the status of Taiwan is unresolved and must be settled peacefully. In other words, with the consent of the people in Taiwan. China misrepresents that. We have, and it gets a little bit weedy as to what American policy is with regard to Taiwan, but that's a basic principle, and China just ignores it. China's view is that it can use force to annex Taiwan, and it has never ruled Taiwan. So this is bad history along with a lot of lying about our policies.
Are any of these sanctions against Putin's friends doing anything?
They are. It's certainly doing a lot to Russia, but China is doing its best to backfill, which is the State Department term. In other words, for relieving Russia of the pain of our sanctions. And here again, Ned Price, State Department spokesman on February 3, actually warned the Chinese not to backfill, and they've been continuing to do that, and the Biden administration has not imposed sanctions. So, Xi Jinping may fear those sanctions, but he doesn't think they're coming anytime soon.
It seems to me here's another despot we don't believe that we don't believe means what he says. President Xi has called Putin his best friend.
Yes. Well, not only that, Dan, but you have, for instance, the 5,000-word joint statement issued on February 4th.
Yes,
where,
right.
No limits partnership, we're closer than Cold War allies, no area of cooperation is forbidden. We're not listening to what these guys say, and that's been true for decades.
He is Gordon Chang. He is the author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War. Again, follow him on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dan and Amy. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
We all want to eat healthy, but have you ever read the ingredients list off of your favorite snack?